So growing up, were you like as obsessed with like the end of the world as I was?
Absolutely.
I feel like everyone at some point has just been obsessed with this idea. Like I remember even when I was in school, did you ever watch that Illuminati, the Jal documentary,
The Arrivals.
The Arrival?
Of course, man.
Bro, it was like the most red pill moment of my life. It's like I couldn't sleep for like 2 weeks after I watched it.
Yeah, I
I
was
was like
dreaming about
shit
the jar.
scared. Like I was dreaming. I'm like, at the end of time, there's this scary figure waiting. He's gonna harvest my soul and shit, you know what I mean? Like I was scared as hell. And like I remember that even when I watched it, right? It's like it's not like I discussed it with my friends, but it turns out like all of them had watched it. Like
Bro,
all of them
I've
had
seen
watched
it.
it, and everyone was losing sleep over Britney Spears and "I'm a Slave for You" music video
Yeah.
with the slaves and everything. Just like, but like I remember, I couldn't get my mind off the
Bro,
entire
everyone's
idea.
had
It was
a
just so interesting.
everyone's had a private arc with the Jal after watching The Arrivals. I
Yeah,
remember having all of these scary dreams where
yeah.
this one-eyed person is coming up,
Oh my,
picking me up, and I'm like praying. I'm praying for my life, bro. I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
cooked. I'm done.
I'm done.
Like,
I'm
I'm done
shocked.
for.
GG's, bro.
Yeah. You had
Yeah,
a good run, but it's
yeah,
see you in the next life.
yeah,
But actually, the idea that that you were introduced to as a kid,
yeah.
that if you were ever keen on the news, as I was when I was like 10 years
Yeah,
old,
yeah, yeah.
you're watching
Little
on.
10-year-old Chud
Bro,
movie.
I was on some weird stuff, bro.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
and you're looking at you're watching the news for like 4 hours a day, and then you realize that there's some layer, right? Maybe it's not the Illuminati or whatever, but there's some hidden hand
yeah.
behind everything that you see. There's some coordination behind all of the weirdness that you see pop up from like Venezuela to Vancouver. So you see there's some kind of coordination. I really do think that appeals to when you're in your stage of um, learning the basic axioms of morality, when you're being told prophetic stories and these Abrahamic tales,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
you're first getting really into the culture, and then you have this fascination with the evil side as well, because that's
absolutely.
the forbidden, the taboo,
Yeah, yeah.
and the arrivals of the Jalic system, all of this, it kind of gives an order to this mystical, fascinating, evil force.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, is it the Freemasons? Oh, is it them? Or is it the Illuminati? Is it like the Frankists? I don't f***ing know, man. But it's like, I feel like en masse, I don't think we're the only chuds who've gone through this. I think like
Yeah.
as like global society as a whole is like pretty obsessed with the idea of the end times. Like,
Bro, think about it this way, bro. Every culture and religion, but I can speak of the Abrahamic faiths in particular. You've got your godly men in the clergy that look a certain way, that have a certain garb. They're your modern day teachers. You don't have an explicit embodiment of the agents of evil.
yeah.
So when someone comes and tells you that, Eminem,
Eminem.
Britney
Yeah,
Spears,
yeah, yeah,
you're
exactly.
obviously gonna be like, yo, shit, what's happening?
What's happening?
And then,
Yeah,
when you look into it, and genuinely all of them are talking about Satanism, all of them are talking about this hedonistic stuff, you kind of start
it's
going,
tough not to kind of like start trying to like make sense of all of
bro,
this.
all the
Trying to
rock
become a
stars.
conspiracy. I think a natural course of action with all of this is to become a bit of a conspiracy theorist.
Bro, okay, think about it this way. Someone comes and says to you, oh, you think that like all the music industry is steeped in Satanism? Of
It's
course
like
it isn't. But then you look at Playboy Cardi and his pentagrams. You look at all like the rock stars from
yeah,
the late 20th century.
yeah, like Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page. The guy was obsessed with Aleister Crowley. I think he bought Aleister Crowley's house.
This
You know what I
and
mean?
yeah, and that
Yeah.
all their associations with like Anton LaVey. I don't know if I'm saying his name.
Yeah, Anton
All
LaVey. Anton LaVey.
these
That's
guys.
more of the death metal boys, but yeah, absolutely.
it's-
They openly say they're Satanists, like a lot.
And then Rick Owens' wife, bro. She's talking about like worshipping Baal.
Yeah.
The Clinton emails, bro. It's all a bit creepy.
It's all a bit
It's undeniable.
and I don't think you can blame anyone for kind of being intrigued by it and being a little bit of a conspiracy theorist about it, even though it's kind of like it's low status to be a conspiracy theorist. Yes, I understand that, but like you can't help but get these ideas a lot. And I think when you take a macro picture, right, some of the greatest works of fiction, of cinema, are more or less ideas about the apocalypse. You know what I mean? Like if you look at A Song of Ice and Fire, like at the end of winter, at
That's
the
Game of
end,
Thrones?
that's Game of Thrones. Yeah, at the end of time itself, there lies this evil outside force, the White Walkers, who are gonna destroy the world. It's an apocalyptic story. You know what I mean?
The entire obsession with zombies in popular culture. That's all it is.
Obsession. There's an apocalypse.
Mad Max, it's all apocalypse, post-apocalypse.
Exactly. You even look at something like One Piece. Like One Piece is supposed to be a story about pirates who are just like, sailing the world, trying to beat up other pirates. But like, no, wait. There's this shadowy demonic force that has actually been ruling the world for 800 years that is trying to bring in a new flood or something to wipe out humanity and have a clean slate. The Star Wars in a lot of ways, you have the dark side of the force, the Sith that wants to take over. Lord of the Rings,
Avengers, anything.
Avengers, like Thanos, there was this apocalypse creating thing. Lord of the Rings, you got Sauron and the forces of Mordor that want to destroy the world.
All the modern epics,
Yeah.
who pit the ultimate good, the proverbial good almost,
Yeah.
proverbial all-time embodiment of evil against each other.
Yeah.
They're all essentially apocalyptic tales.
Absolutely,
Because
yeah.
what you're seeing is that when the ultimate good and the ultimate evil, and just not as, some reflection of God versus the devil, some reflection of the ultimate good and the ultimate evil pitted against each other, what's at stake is the world.
Yeah.
And it's also not a coincidence that when it comes to people,
Yeah.
right? For everything, there's a personal religion and a public religion, and there's a personal politics and a public politics. The same way, all these apocalyptic epic tales are like the personal struggle of good and evil inside us writ large.
Yeah.
It's like the proverbial, the image, the metaphysical evil versus the metaphysical good.
Yeah.
And again, like I said, what's at stake is the world
The
itself.
world. Absolutely.
So in a way,
Humanity
what I'm trying to
itself,
get at is that all real good versus real evil tales are essentially apocalyptic tales.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Or they're harping on that dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's no surprise that basically every theology, every religion has some type of form of an apocalypse. Be it like a cyclical apocalypse, which is like with the Yuga system in Hinduism, where it's like you've got 4 epochs, and the Kali Yuga is like the dark one, after which we have a clean slate, the world restarts. Or you have the linear aspect of time, which is like we're leading to this doomsday event, which is more in line with the Abrahamic tradition. Or even if you go back to like prehistoric religions like Norse mythology or Greek mythology, you have this date with destiny, the gods versus man in like the Greek tradition. Before that, you had the Titans versus the gods. In Norse mythology, you have Ragnarok, which is the rebellious Loki, son of God, rebelling against God himself.
Every
Odin.
single major world religion, like all historic cultures, have a flood myth in common.
Yeah.
Which obviously is allegorical to or alludes to the
Cleansing.
Abrahamic flood as well,
Yeah.
right? The same way, everyone has an end times eschatology,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, obviously, that's no coincidence. But what everyone is essentially saying is that there is a human story.
Yeah.
And like all stories, there was a beginning, creation. There was a climax, which is maybe what we're living through. And then there was an end, which is the end times, day of judgment, whatever you want to call it.
And or for the cyclicals, a renewal.
A renewal.
Yeah.
A renewal.
Yeah. Obviously, we're like deeply obsessed with this idea, not just the conspiracy theorists,
And-
not just modern media, but to the oldest form of theology itself. Like,
What
I
I
love
found
this idea.
really interesting was there's this book called The Purple Cloud.
Yeah.
Right? I think written at the end of the 19th century. And I remember when I read it first, there was a commentary in the blurb where someone was saying this is the first great post-apocalyptic tale in popular culture.
Yeah.
Great book, by the way. Stupidest comment you could have possibly given on it. Popular culture in the past, in all of humanity, was always religious myth and religious tales.
Yeah.
That is by definition all apocalyptic, post-apocalyptic, renewal, death. To give that comment, it's like, is it any coincidence that as major religious axioms fail or major religious axioms get pushed to the background, all of these tales, whether it's Avengers or the Lord of the Rings, that mirror the structure of the apocalyptic tales, mirror the epicness of the apocalyptic tales, you see the old end times eschatology recast in all of these stories.
Yeah.
And just the way people in the past, the tribes and the nations of the past are obsessed with an end time story. We're also obsessed with this ultimate good versus ultimate evil end time story.
Yeah.
They've just,
But why do you think that is on a psychological level? On a psychological level, what does watching The Arrivals do for you? Like a child, what does reading about eschatology and comparing eschatologies do for you psychologically and people psychologically?
I think it's the most natural impulse in the world to be concerned with it, to be fascinated by it. Because like I said, just like with everything else, human drives and impulses writ large fascinate us, right?
Yeah.
When I think this is death writ large. This is everyone has some, even in our younger years, some conception of death. And the ultimate showdown, the eschatological showdown between good and evil, Christ and Antichrist, whatever you want to call it, is you're at the cusp of the death of the world. So it's death writ large. So of course people are going to be fascinated. You know, there's ultimate obscurity. There's no clarity. There's no secular, scientifically provable clarity of what happens to us after death. So what happens to humans after the death of humanity, which is the end of time. So it's the most natural.
This is still, I feel like, a social, political explanation of the thing. But I'm talking about just on a monkey brain psychological level. Like, it's like, when I think about it, it's like it gives me clarity. First of all, it gives me clarity, good guys, bad guys. It appeals to like my most tribal instinct, like, hey, this is my band of brothers and we're going to take down...
I actually think I'm trying to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm trying to say, I think that the fascination is still essentially monkey brained. I don't think it's
I think there's also an aspect of it where it's like, you know, there's an escapist aspect to it as well. It's like, you know, the machinations of the modern world, they're evil, they trap us, death, this and that. We're kind of fascinated with this idea of a clean slate. Hey, let's just go through it once, let's just fight this force once, and there's a clean slate. The great flood comes in, washes away all the evil, let's build anew, you know. There's also this idea where it's like the most meaningful thing in a lot of ways, you know what I mean?
It's like a meme, which is like this guy says, I would literally die for my family.
Yeah.
And someone responds saying, but would you live for your family?
Yeah.
Would you clean up your bad habits? Would you be nicer to them? Would you do all the hard labor in this world that isn't one moment of sacrifice, but a life of small iterations of sacrifices?
Yeah.
Right? So it's that psychological impulse writ large.
Yeah.
It's like, which is why you see a lot of the people that are very tribal politically or obsessed with these eschatological things and these civilizational showdowns are also people that don't have much going on in their lives.
Yeah.
I really do think that. And
that's mean. I love eschatology, man. That's mean.
No. People there's being fascinated by something and then there's making it your entire personality.
Yeah, absolutely.
Irrational extent.
Absolutely. That's actually a very, very interesting point that you raised. Like, you know, it's kind of like the doomerist thing is manifested politically in the furthest extremes as well. It's like, like if these trans people come near me, it's like
I will combust.
I will
spontaneously combust.
Like it's kind of the same impulse.
Yeah.
It's
so it's
an apocalyptic impulse.
My daily responsibility actually becoming a better person or achieving something, and I'm outsourcing my entire sense of wrong or right or direction or meaning to the civilizational showdown between the West and the East, say something like that.
Yeah, that's
right.
Yeah.
And I think again, that's a monkey brain impulse captured by social bipolarity. You know.
But do you think it's monkey brain impulse, or is there like an actual deeper cosmic dualism involved where it's like, yeah, we feel it on the most primitive levels, but on the highest of levels possible, on the most esoteric levels possible, this dualism does exist. Like, you know,
100%.
Be it yin and yang, be it like good and evil, be it like Christ and Antichrist, you know. So
no, absolutely. Look,
there's an element of that. Yeah.
100%. And the immature attitude that we're talking about is an inability to integrate, deal with, understand these larger binaries, axioms that do govern reality.
Yeah.
That even in the
but it's not a very easy task, huh? To understand and reckon
hardest thing in the world.
It's like it's terrifying, number one, and number two, you can't help but get a little bit emotional about it in a lot of ways. It's like, oh, what if AI is the Antichrist? Well, we got to destroy the data centers, man. You know what I mean? It's like on some level, you will feel this monkey brain impulse.
If it's bound up in your faith, then of course you're going to be emotional about it.
Yeah. So,
right? And look, in all of, even in the most secular psychological explanations, if you go deep into Western readings of Sufis, right? They recast the end of the world as something that is always present, always occurring.
Yeah.
And it's
I've read
not
this,
even
I've read
so.
this.
There's like the social level where it's like, oh, cyclical societies. No, this is even divorced from that. They're saying no. There is an internal end of times. There's an internal eschatology. So, for example, right? If I'm living my life as a believer in XYZ religion, and I'm conscious of an end time, that's my cutoff date, right?
Yeah.
For doing either death, my personal death, or the cutoff date if I'm around for the end times, right? That's the last time I can ever reform myself and, earn good deeds, bad deeds, however you're conceptualizing it.
Yeah.
That will, in real time, be my personal eschatology, right? I have a cutoff date. I have to get my things together.
Yeah.
So for them, that's more of the core concern. And that translates onto, there's also the psychosocial element of eras, aeons, epochs, etc. And then there's the most literalist meanings which says that there's one human story, and that story has a beginning, creation, climax, what we're living through, and an end, which is the end times.
Yeah. So I think it's like a useful task to kind of compare these different eschatologies, and one that I have been absolutely fascinated by for a few months now, but like I've really gone deep into it, is like, the astrological ages. The age of Pisces transitioning into the age of Aquarius. Before the age of Pisces, I think it was the age of Aries, and before that was the age of Taurus. So all these like vast epochs signify like a evolution in the god image. And god image is not the right word, but like, the psychological archetype. It's a psychological evolution happening in each of these. So it's like the age of Taurus, which was like, and each of these astrological ages is like 2000 years long, 2200, 2300 years long, something like that. And the age of Taurus would like symbolize like, the earthly deities, man being totally in touch with nature. And that was the conception of a god image at that time, which was like, we are one with nature. There was a primitive aspect of total immersion in that nature.
A pantheistic conception of the universe.
Yeah. And that reflected in the god image, that reflected in the religious, the theology of the time,
Like a
basically.
pre-modern Wahdatul Wujud. The divine and the natural
Interlinked.
one.
Like, you had, even Jung talks about this. It's like, when I would see like a lion, I could see that's my bush soul, that's like me, that's like the shadow of me. Like, I am one with that lion. And he went through an entire, like, it's kind of tough to explain right now, but like, he went through an entire account of this thing. And that was the age of Taurus. Now, the age of Taurus, the shadow of the age of Taurus was that it could not decipher. It did not have a will to power that would like separate itself from nature and kind of like impose itself. So what comes up in opposition to the age of Taurus is the age of Aries, which is the age of the hero, which is the age of like, the Iron Age. It was like conquered.
It's
It was
a
like
rebellion by mankind against sameness with the rest of nature.
exactly.
It's saying that there is
We are not.
a cosmic ambition that sets us apart from you, and that the hero, in a Promethean way, in an Icarus-like fashion, reaches for the stars.
Yeah, exactly. So this is the time that Nietzsche would describe as the time of master morality, the age of Aries, where it's like, you've got this Greek god image, which is like Zeus and like Ares and Apollo and Athena, which symbolize like the divine aspects of humanity, the emotions,
mastery over nature.
The mastery over nature, which is like a separation from nature in a lot of ways, and this was exemplified by the greatest
like
people of the
Poseidon
time.
is not saying that I'm one with water.
Yeah.
Poseidon says
I am a
rule
master
as
over water. Yeah. So like the great like historical figures of this time would have been Alexander the Great, Moses, the lawgiver. These are kind of the figures associated with this entire thing. And then the weakness of that entire, the shadow of that entire age of Aries is, it's kind of brutal, man. It's like, we're going to take over these people, we're going to enslave them, we're going to like, do all this master morality that, Nietzsche was so fond of in a lot of ways, but that created a negative shadow, which was like, what about the slaves? What about humanity? What about all these people who we're just conquering and desecrating as we wished, as the Romans wish, as the Greeks wish? And what comes in opposition to that is the age of Pisces. age of Pisces is characterized by the Christ figure. So a lot of the astrological guys think that the age of Pisces starts with Christ himself, and it's an inversion of that master morality. So Rene Girard would say that what Pisces, what Christ does, what slave morality does, that master morality doesn't, is that it sharpens up the Overton window of what is morally acceptable. And because we have this moral innovation in our minds, like, hey, these people have souls, we can't be like horrible to them. We've got to become better human beings. What happens because of that guardrails you put on yourself? You technologically innovate. It's like we're still living through the age of Pisces. So what happened in the age of Pisces is that you have moral empires like the British and maybe the Americans as well fit into this. It's like, we cannot accept slavery. We cannot do this. So what are we going to do? We're going to technologically innovate. It's because of these guardrails. The British could have enslaved the entire world at a certain point, but they said that, hey, you know what? We're not going to take in slaves. We're not going to do all this slave labor shit. We're going to industrialize. We're going to tinker with our hand. We're going to figure out something crazy. And what happened there? You have technological revolutions. This was the entire Enlightenment era. This was all of these things. So that's the beauty of the age of Pisces, where it's like, it's a justification of that slave morality. Slave morality had a reason, and that was the reason. So continuously what's happening in these astrological ages is this innovation in the conscious. There's this innovation in the holy. There's an innovation that's happening in the God image.
I have mostly read about the transition from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
And I mean, let's bring it back to the core Jungian image, which is the two brother fishes swimming in tandem, right? And they're going kind of yin and yang.
They're going opposite directions, yeah.
And so one fish is the Christ, and one fish is the Antichrist.
Yeah.
And Jung argues that as the perfect, flawless, non-evil integrating image of the Christ grows, so does the evil brother.
Yeah.
The unintegrated, angry brother in its shadow, which is the Antichrist.
Yeah.
Right?
The fish swimming in the opposite direction.
And the more the image of the Christ gains in intensity, because it is its shadow, think about it this way. If I were to get taller, so would my shadow.
Yeah.
As the stature of the Christ begins to dominate the age, you see the virulence, the Antichrist simmering in its contained, angry, ready to burst forth form.
Yeah.
Right? And it's almost as if you see the Christian era, which is still very much present.
Yeah,
in its remnants dominating the world.
Yeah.
As the West is today.
Yeah.
Its cultural artifacts and its dominance proliferating.
Yeah.
And then the Antichrist system trying to will itself into existence. And the analogy that I always think of here is Professor Quirrell in the first Harry Potter.
Yeah.
You see he's got this turban on and Lord Voldemort is being ushered into the world and he's hiding out, back here.
Yeah.
And now the idea there is Lord Voldemort has ceased to exist in the terrestrial world.
Yeah.
He is in some third realm.
Yeah.
Between the hereafter and our world.
Yeah.
Right? He is in the imaginal realm, as Corbin or Ibn Arabi would maybe say. He's in the world of symbols.
Yeah.
Right? He exists there as the ultimate archetype of evil in their world.
Yeah.
And what Professor Quirrell is doing, he's using the dark arts to usher him through a portal into the world.
Yeah.
And you see this in all of pop culture. We were talking about Ghostbusters, for instance. In the first Ghostbusters, there is a timeless evil spirit demon that has always existed, and he's being ushered into the terrestrial world through a literal portal. And this also gets Landian in a certain way, where Nick Land says time is flat, time is non-linear. Yes, the singularity is pulling itself back from the future, but
it's already there.
That's a secondary kind of formulation. The real image is that if time is flat and the singularity already inevitably exists, the link that the tech guys have with the occult is that through their dark art, which is technological sorcery, they're using a non-linear time-based portal to usher in the singularity in real time.
Yeah.
Right? So all of these represent this characterization in the age of Pisces of
the opposite fish.
Right?
Yeah.
The Christ versus the Antichrist. And now Jung says, now we're at the cusp of the age of Aquarius, which is more based around, which rejects the binary of the Christ and the Antichrist, which creates a world in which the way Christ negates all evil and all evil exists outside the perfect image of Christ, he says, no, in the age of Aquarius, the enlightened, individuated soul will be able to contend and contain that evil within him.
Yeah.
Right? So, for example, the new images he uses,
It's the water barrier, the water pouring.
yeah, so
So it's kind of like analogous to the flooding as well in a lot of ways. It's analogous to the fish in the water, and we're pouring more water in them. So we are trying to synthesize
elements of the unconscious are
trying to
flooding.
synthesize the opposite fishes moving in opposite directions.
And the literal way he phrases it is he says that flooding of water into the pond is the unconscious elements coming to the fore and flooding the human psyche.
Yeah.
Right? And then the image of Mercurius I find particularly interesting because he says that this is the archetype of the process of individuation.
Yeah.
So the way the Christ is the integrated self-image,
Yeah.
right? Or the integrated God image, Mercurius is the process itself. It's that dynamic process over time that allows you to contain and contend with evil in an eternal negotiation.
Yeah.
You know, like we talked about individuation as a rhythmic, endless force without any definite destination. So that is Mercurius. And at the end of all of that, he says just the way that Christ had a certain perfected image or an integrated image in the age of Pisces, in the age of Aquarius, you have the Filius Philosophorum.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting archetype or a character. He says that this is both a child and a king. This is a new perfected self-image of an enlightened person which holds contradictions in its mind, in his mind actively. It does not negate evil, yet he encircles and incorporates evil and contends with it in a live negotiation.
Yeah.
Which is very different from the free of all impurities Christ image.
Yeah, which is like, evil is just the absence of good. Though this new Aquarian image of the binary of the dualistic question is like, one is not just a negation of the other. One exists as its own axiom and it has its own reasoning. It has its own logic.
It has an incredibly powerful implication
Yeah.
for the real world.
Yeah.
And how we process organized religion in particular.
Yeah.
So the dualism of the age of Pisces, which led to a simple good and evil,
Yeah.
where one could not balance both within themselves, the Jungian take would be that this is what allowed for total warfare. This is what allowed for institutionalized churches that saw themselves as the harbingers of good versus an eternal, unwavering evil which needed to be dealt with.
Yeah.
Right? But now, if there is no perfect duality, if Mercurius is something to be aspired to, the image of the eternally dynamic, self-correcting person that harnesses their evil, that acknowledges their good, and even the final image, the Filius Phosphorum, is an image of someone who has not at once rejected all evil, but says that these impurities exist within me. I'm going to contend and contain them within me.
Exactly, exactly.
If that is your aspirational self in the new age, what that means is the individuated person in the new age is no longer the Christ image, or is no longer one who's free from impurities. He is, he has an internal locus of validation because there's no duality anymore. There's no big church. There's no Christ versus Satan, right?
Yeah.
And if that doesn't exist anymore, you now have room to find your own balance, which explains in a lot of ways the recent technologically led resurgence of religion, but far from organized religion.
So this is a very, very interesting point you just brought up. It's like
You brought it up, in fact, to me first, and that's why
yeah. So it's like, you've seen this extreme, like, reversal in 100-year-old historical trend where it's like each generation becomes less and less religious than the previous one. But now this Gen Z, the fully technologically integrated, like maybe the proto-cyborg generation in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
They're rejecting it. They're rejecting the materialist, atheistic aspects of that dominated like the past maybe 70, 80 years or so.
That's why no one thinks Javed Akhtar is cool anymore.
That's why, yeah, we don't think you're cool, bro. Like, you're f***ing lame. If like into 2025, you're still an edgy atheist. It's like, brother, help yourself. You know
Like,
what
dude,
I
come
mean?
on, like Richard Dawkins is not a cool guy in 2025.
Yeah, he's a
He
loser.
never was, but like
Yeah,
he's definitely not
at
now.
the time when he was a cool counterculture and stuff, but now it's
Yeah.
like, bro, if you tell me you like Dawkins or Sam Harris or Christopher Hitchens, I'm like, go fuck yourself, man. I don't have time to talk to you. But yeah, more importantly, like, there's a there's a technological basis to this revival of religion, because this is another thing. It's like church attendances in America have not gone up in the young generation. Church attendances in Europe are going down. So it's not that institutional religion that you had in the past, but young people are more and more turning towards God. And the question is why? And why would you mean it's a technologically induced newfound religiosity or refound religiosity? It's technology. It's because like I go on Instagram, my algorithm is feeding me like maybe trad content, maybe like religious influencer content. Like these are very
I think
common
that
algorithms that a lot of people are getting now. There's this revival of like a technological like my phone is making me religious. You know what I mean? I can go. I mean, obviously I have the ability to go search and read about anything I want, but also the algorithm, depending upon my mind state, is showing me these Christian
so
or
that is
Muslim
the
influencers who are turning me religious.
that is the vehicle,
Yeah.
right? And I think that that's been kickstarted
Yeah.
by a mass cultural encounter with the devil.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is there is no greater path to realizing that God is real than having a literal encounter with demons.
Yeah.
Okay? And so, if you grow up in a culture steeped in all this demonology and all of these references to the occult,
Yeah.
and you see that that there are indications of all of this being real. If you see godlessness firsthand, nothing will motivate you to turn towards God like an encounter with the devil with.
Yeah.
Well, and
And that is literally what like all of us, like
And then
young
technology
generations, are
supercharges
dealing with
this.
it every day. Like you have the rise of these, really strange, like occult, death cult based, like shooters and stuff that is especially
Yeah.
happening in America today. So people are having encounters with the proverbial devil, with the inner demons, with all the dark aspects of it. Like the mental health crisis are like it's a testament to
It's
that
the
idea.
godlessness of the present world, right?
Yeah.
It's this technocracy-based moral order
Yeah.
that says that I'm going to quantify your moral priorities in terms of how much it's contributing to GDP, or what's the real GDP, what's the real population growth? How much do you need to grow in
Yeah.
order to facilitate these people that do this World Economic Forum headcount,
Yeah.
and we're like, these are people with souls,
Yeah.
right? And then when you grow up in this oppressive environment that's forcing godlessness upon you, right? That's forcing all this occult linked thinking upon you, you're inevitably going to be like, obviously the people steeped in this are not happy.
Yeah.
They don't have meaning.
Yeah.
And we must turn to something greater. What is the opposite force? It is the classical ideas of God.
Yeah.
Reformed, revamped, recast through technology into something more palatable, more personable in the digital age.
Yeah, exactly. So this is what's happening. And I think to actually understand, like, somebody might ask, like, hey, what is so devilish about technocracy? What is so devilish about material? Because like on its basis, it's like, we have better living conditions than ever. We're living longer than ever. We are more materially fulfilled than ever. So why is this so evil? What's such a problem with this? And to this, it's a very, very good question, and it deserves to be reckoned with. And I think the person who reckoned with it really, really well was this German mystic called Rudolf Steiner. So Rudolf Steiner characterized two different like evil forces at play. There's the force of Lucifer, which is like, we're all familiar with the concept of Lucifer. And this Ahriman. Ahriman is actually an appropriation of the Zoroastrian, like, dualist of the evil. So that was like, I think they have like Azura Mazda, who's like the good, and Ahriman, who's the evil. But what Rudolf Steiner basically said that, prior to Christ, maybe in the age of Aries and the age of Taurus, age of Aries actually more, right? You had a Lucifer incarnation. So what Lucifer in this conceptualization of evil represents is pride. It represents ego. It represents intellectual and spiritual excesses. And we saw this kind of play out in the pre-Christian era.
Son of the morning flying too close to the sun.
Exactly. That's Lucifer. So what's the Luciferian impulse of those societies, ritual sacrifice, the burning of children, the burning of whatever, some of these extremely devilish, mystical practices, which are like
It's like mysticism gone awry.
mysticism, uncontrolled mysticism, which is like,
Extremely inflated.
yeah, so you see this really, really strongly in like ancient Egypt, where you have these god emperor figures. Man is that god. Even you see this Luciferian impulse in like Greece, where it's like you have god men, like Zeus is a god man, Achilles was a real man who was a demigod. So you have this Luciferian excess, which is like venerating man to the point of flying to the sun, unbridled ego. God, this is the time of God Emperor. This is the time when the people who had the key to civilization were the initiates, were the insiders. This is where it's these type of excesses. Okay, that's the Luciferian impulse. So what he posits as like the counterweight to this is not good, but is a different type of evil. So that is the Ahrimanic evil, which is an extremely, unlike the Luciferians, who are like extremely spiritual, who are extremely excessed in esoteric ideas, the Ahrimanic rejects all spirituality. It rejects anything transcendent. Everything is material. Everything is numbers. Everything is GDP. Everything is economics. Everything is total mastery of the world. It's Darwinian thinking at its core. It's like, survival of the fittest type of thinking. So you have these two different strains of evil. So the Lucifer incarnate already happened in the age of Aries. Okay? And Christ symbolized the perfect balance between these two impulses, because once again,
And Ahriman came into us in the form of Klaus Schwab.
Maybe it's an Ahrimanic impulse. Yeah. What he says over here though is that both of these directions, both of these extremes, right? We have the free will to ebb and flow between these extremes. And why this is so important is because the actual balance of spiritual excess and material excess is quite literally the guardrails which you have, that we even talk about, which is Deen and Dunya, which you have to balance the two. And that's what Christ symbolized. That's what, the Abrahamic creed symbolized, which is like, hey, let's bring a balance to these different forces. Because in moderation, both of these are positive things. It is positive to be practical and material and thinking of like, how can I make the real world better? And it's also practical, and it's also important to have a spiritual element of it. So Rudolf Steiner, that's why I think his characterization of evil is so amazing, because it's not saying that these are wholly negative forces in of themselves. It's that when you delve into the extreme aspects of these forces, right, that's when evil really starts manifesting itself. And there are two different forms of evil. There are two different dimensions to this process. So that's kind of his conceptualization, and I think it's very, very useful, especially when you keep in account, okay, Lucifer has already come on this planet.
And this harps on a pretty classical balance to find God, as in the merciful.
Yeah.
And
all powerful.
All powerful, but they say the split between the merciful God, and then he who also holds you to account, who punishes you.
Yeah.
Right? And neither of those things are bad in and of themselves. Obviously, being compassionate is good.
Yeah.
Being compassionate without any moral guardrails is not good.
Yeah.
And holding people to account and punishment is good. But again,
there's excesses to this as well.
Obviously.
Yeah.
Right? And somewhere in between that, there is the perfect God image.
Yeah.
Who is own eternal calculation, appropriately merciful.
Yeah.
And appropriately a judge.
Appropriately just. Yeah. Exactly. So he kind of says this Ahrimanic force is like growing in influence on the planet. The Ahrimanic forces are like, they've totally taken over the West, and there will be an actual physical human incarnation of this Ahrimanic forces. And he explicitly says this. Like, there was an explicit Luciferian incarnation that happened somewhere in Asia. He reckoned there was China, and there was an explicit incarnation, because he was a Gnostic Christian. So he says that there's a explicit incarnation of that God image in Christ, and there's going to be an explicit incarnation of the Ahriman. Which
you think you're not taking me seriously? What I'm telling you is Klaus Schwab, man.
It could be. It very well could be. But what is the immediate like association we make of that? it's not too far away from what our religion also talks about.
Yeah.
You know, where there is this singular character that's going to come in the future that's going to exemplify all of these excesses on the other hand, you know?
And the metaphor is perfect because even pre-Islam, pre-Abrahamic religions, the idea that one eye serves as logical knowledge or scientific inquiry, and the other eye serves as spiritual mystical inquiry, is an eternal metaphor. And an Ahriman like Antichrist that is one-eyed,
Yeah.
would symbolize the shutting off of the eye of religion or spirituality or of God consciousness,
Yeah.
and a complete manifestation or an unfettered manifestation of pure scientism, pure materialism, and the objects in the milieu of this world.
Yeah.
Right? So that Antichrist,
Yeah.
that the Abrahamic faiths, and that we in particular in our religion also hold as inevitable or as a historical reality that is going to happen,
Yeah.
right? It actually fits in perfectly with Rudolf Steiner's Ahriman-like manifestation of evil, which
Yeah.
is cold, hard, scientific, materialistic,
Yeah.
and of this world,
Yeah.
and that sheds God consciousness completely.
Exactly. And this is where a lot of these ideas that, you know, okay, AI is going to be the Antichrist, the singularity is going to be the Antichrist. This is kind of where these ideas can kind of link their genealogy to.
The entire conundrum is, there are Christians who say, oh, that this Christian and Jews at odds.
Yeah.
One says, oh, we're going to have a Messiah. The other says, your Messiah is going to be my Antichrist.
Exactly. Yeah.
Muslims have a similar position as well. And they're all kind of trapped in this conundrum where when that kind of figure comes,
Yeah.
he's going to be, you know how one man's terrorist is another man's hero?
Freedom fighter. Yeah.
One
Yeah.
man's rebel is another man's terrorist, whatever one man. Yeah. So that same way, one man's Messiah is going to be another man's Antichrist.
Yeah.
Right? And if you cast him in the role of, say, the AI singularity, you see this already in real time being addressed. Joe Rogan goes on and says something I found absolutely absurd. He says, oh, actually, the second coming of Christ
It's going to be AI.
could be the second coming of Christ could be AI. Peter Thiel comes on and says, "Oh, anyone who's opposing my work is the embodiment of the Antichrist."
With Peter Thiel's view, there's a lot of nuance to it because I went in the rabbit hole as well. So Peter Thiel and like these transhumanist boys, right? They actually think that what is going to be the Antichrist is this demiurgic force that causes human stagnation, that doesn't let us technologically innovate. Because if you keep technology and knowledge as the Promethean gift of God that he has given us, that is our duty to uncover, right? Anything that acts as a catacomb, that acts not as a catacomb, that acts as a hindrance to that journey, right? That has to be the Antichrist. So that's kind of their position on it. It's a very interesting position.
Sure.
There's a sincerity in where they are like that entire the Silicon Valley cult is saying that, you know, knowledge is the holy gift. We need to find God through knowledge, and anything that acts as a break to that knowledge, right, is the Antichrist force.
But at the same time, you see how from the external neutral perspective,
Yeah.
it's like they're already where there's a lot of people increasingly saying
Yeah.
the singularity is going to be the Antichrist.
Yeah.
And the people creating at the forefront of creating the singularity are saying the people opposing us are going to be the Antichrist.
Yeah.
So that binary, however Peter Thiel conceptualized himself, is secondary. However the theists, the Abrahamic, the Christians, Muslims, Jews conceptualize themselves is secondary to the larger observation that a certain dualism is coming into place.
It's literally the age of...
That's happening.
It's a Piscean contradiction. Now, I want to go back to the astrological ages for 1 second, because Rudolf Steiner, once again, in his work, he said that, bro, okay, it's not like you end one astrological age and another one starts. It's like... it's 2,160, 2,200 years each, and they overlap with each other. So like, let's say by year 1000 in the age of Pisces, you're looking at the peak of Pisces, but that's when Aquarian influences start as well. You understand? And that makes perfect sense if you look at the Pisces and Aquarius timeline, because what is the beginning of that Ahrimanic Aquarian impulse starting to come into mankind? It's the Renaissance, Enlightenment, scientific revolution, blah blah blah. And that
Protestant Revolution is the
yeah.
perfect
And
embodiment.
that happens exactly at the midpoint of the age of Pisces. So that's when the Ahrimanic, the Aquarian, I don't want to call Aquarian Ahrimanic, I shouldn't make that like that mix, but that's when the Aquarian influence starts. And as Pisces is coming to an end, Aquarius is going to start coming to its peak. You know, so that date with destiny, the fight that's going to come between those brother fishes happened at the end of Pisces, and it's at the midpoint of Aquarius. So we might actually even be in the midpoint of Aquarius right now, where there has to be a synthesizing of these two cosmically dualistic forces.
But the most interesting bit and nuance in between the two versions of the human story we're talking about is that, the archetype astrology based interpretation that Jung has of these epochs or these aeons are recursive, recurring.
Yeah.
There's no definite eschatological literal end where fire rains from the sky and mountains split open like cotton and there's an end of the world, right? For him, there is an end of civilizations. There is a certain morphology that a certain civilization has. Then through a recursive process turns into something else. That is the entire story of, say, the Piscean to the Aquarius, right?
Yeah.
And then the Abrahamic faiths and all the other faiths, actually, the old faiths,
Yeah.
are talking about a literal destruction of the world.
Yeah.
And yes, there are modern interpretations to say that, oh, this is all metaphorical, but the adherents of those religions largely do not buy that.
I think even if you look at Jung and the and like the astrological, the mystical, right? They don't think it's just metaphorical. They think that it
No,
is
Jung thinks it's explicitly metaphorical. The
thinks
Gnostics don't.
He thinks it's going to play out in the real world as well. Like he explicitly said that this is going to play out in the real world. Rudolf Steiner,
but in
like
Ion, it's very
like
clear
Rudolf
it's not-
Steiner, like Rudolf Steiner explicitly said our obsession with electrical technology, and we have to remember.
I mean,
this is in
because
the-
Jung is not Rudolf Steiner. They've got different views.
Yeah,
In Ion,
different
Jung is
views.
very clear that this is not an explicit Christian end of the world.
No, he doesn't. But he thinks, but he does. I don't take away him saying that this is not going to take place in the material world. Like the material world will always follow suit to what's happening in the metaphysical.
I think it's very clear. I'll put the reference in. I think it's very clear.
Okay, fair enough. Steiner, on the other hand,
that's
like,
the reason.
yeah.
There's a reason that Jung says that this does not map onto, for example, Islamic or Hindu canon.
Yeah.
Because he's not trying to give you a tale of the entire world. He's saying this is how the Western psychology in particular has evolved.
Perhaps you're right about that. Steiner, though, in particular, has a more holistic perspective on it.
The Gnostics.
Steiner, he's a mystic, he's a Christian Gnostic, Christian mystic, whatever. But Steiner has a very, very literal interpretation of it. He's like, no.
So the Gnostics.
Yeah, he's like, this is a consciousness that is stirring up. Nikola Tesla is like one of these Aramanic figures. You know, he has a bit of an obsession with Nikola Tesla as well. But he said that, you know, it's going to be explicitly electrical technology that is going to be the main logistical force behind the Aramanic world. And he's like, at some point in the middle of the 21st century, it's like this figure is destined to come. Like he's very, very explicit about it. It's very, very interesting reading some of Rudolf Steiner's work on it.
I feel like the way to what a lot of things that were seen to be magical phenomena in the ancient world, right? Whether it's magnets or any natural astrology-based phenomena, I'm like, dude, the stuff that you see, the fact that we can broadcast this in a higher definition that your eyes are capable of seeing and beam it right into your room onto your phone is pretty magical to me.
It is.
So
it is magic.
The sorcery angle of technology that we just kind of seem to be ignoring. It's like, dude, no, I think scientists are magicians.
Yeah.
I think financiers are magicians.
Yeah.
Right? And just ripping all of these incredible things that human beings are capable of, good or bad is another secondary.
Yeah.
But these, you know, we were talking about the interest-based system the other day.
Yeah.
Okay? Taxation the other day. You borrow from the future. You base money on assets that don't exist and you create a world of endless abundance. You tell me what that is if it isn't sorcery.
Yeah.
To me, that's a lot more impressive than, you know, making something levitate in a room.
Yeah.
Right? So there is that mystical angle that although it is so manifest, although it is so obvious, like why is not binary code viewed as a spell?
Hmm.
Right? Why is not the explanation behind how, I don't know, photosynthesis works
No.
not seen as a reflection of scripture
I
in
mean,
lived
there
reality?
is a strain of thought that does say that like the Kabbalah and numerology is basically code. It's basically like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
computer code. It's like protocode basically. The Kabbalah, the
Yep.
numerology, and all these things.
Yes, I'm not saying that
They're
we're the
like
first to say this, obviously, but
yeah.
in the mass, there's no, idea that this is some reflection of good and bad divinity
Yeah.
in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think another thing that we've even talked about this a few times already, but I think it's appropriate to get into this idea as well. It's like it's a knowledge riddle ultimately, man, because all of it comes full circle in a knowledge riddle. Even Lucifer and Ahriman, in a lot of ways, can be centered around knowledge riddle, where it's like one is excessive spiritual knowledge, one is excessive material knowledge, but there's a there's a continuous element of knowledge that is being played out. Even if you look at the original story, it was the tree of knowledge that Adam ate out of, or the tree of immortality in other traditions. That I think that's also what we accept. It's the knowledge is the key to immortality, and like all scientific evolution that has taken place since, in some way, shape, or form, the transcendental question it is asking is that, hey, how can we live a bit longer? How can we live in a bit more material abundance? How can we like have better lives? So there's this continuous question, and uh, material science and all these things have done an excellent job in addressing them so far. It's like what used to be like a 60% death rate for an infant is now what, 1-2%, maybe
And
not
now you've
even.
got
Lifespan that used to be 40-50 years old is now touching 90 in some developed countries.
and now you've got Putin and Xi Jinping caught in a hot mic talking about how you can live 150 years to 150 years of
Yeah,
age.
yeah.
And to everyone who was, just not taking these things seriously, it's like, yeah, dude, you keep consuming your slop.
Yeah.
You stay in your slop hole. You keep like arguing over who's gonna win, like Barcelona or Real Madrid. Sorry, I like football, but don't get triggered. But it's like, yeah, dude, you stay in that slop dialectic for the rest of your lives and see that none of this stuff is ever gonna come to pass.
Yeah.
When Putin and Xi are talking about, super soldiers that live to be like 2,000 years old, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's a common idea that, listen, man, if we can die, like there was a black. Have you ever watched Black Mirror?
I'm no, no, I haven't.
It's hit or miss, but there was this one fantastic episode in which what happens is that there's this woman who's in like this dream world looking place, right? And she meets a partner over there that she falls in love with. But what the reality of that thing was that it was a computer simulation. And in real life, they were both like 90-year-old women, both on their deathbed, and they were deciding whether they want to upload their consciousness. And then they fall in love in the digital simulation, and they have real consciousness there, and they fall in love there.
Bro, this is like 5 years away, probably 10
Yeah,
years away.
exactly.
Yeah.
So they fall in love in the digital world, and then they seek each other out in the material world. And one of the women, they're both 90 years old or something, and then one of the women is like, I'm not going to choose to upload my consciousness into the computer because I want to be reunited with my husband who never got the ability to integrate his consciousness into this. And I want to be wherever the other is, like I want to be there. But her partner is saying, no, how can you do this to me? Like they've been having an affair in this digital world for like 5-6 years now. They're deeply in love with each other. Like, how can you do this to me? But I love you. Like, this is real. Even though like it's not in the material, it doesn't feel any less real. So why shouldn't you should upload yourself to the digital dream world where like you can simulate yourself in any reality possible, and there are other like lost souls who've uploaded their consciousness there as well. It's a paradise in a way. And then ultimately what happens, it's like, and it's a troubling question. It's like should you do that if you were in that state or not? And what happens is that ultimately like the power of the love wins, and she convinces her partner to not give up
the dead husband.
Yeah, don't seek out the dead husband that you don't know about. Join me in the simulation.
Choose certainty.
Choose certainty that we can live together in this dream world forever. And that really moved me, man, because it's like realistically, okay, we want to imagine that, man, no, I would not upload my consciousness onto this supercomputer. But it's like when you see the power of that love, the power of that, how real that thing is being depicted in it, it's like I felt happy. Hey, love won, love won. But hey, it's kind of
It's
freaky. And these are questions that you have to ultimately grapple with when you're debating about these things. Where yes, okay, the AI singularity, the transhuman world, it's good. It is kind of scary.
You're telling me the new question,
Yeah.
the new defining question is no longer going to be, do you love me enough to grow old with me? It's going to be, do you love me enough to
join
upload
me in
your
the singularity.
consciousness? Do you love me enough to upload your consciousness into the
A
the
super
AI
quantum
netherworld,
computer, yeah.
into the AI netherworld, so that I can live with you forever? That's going to be the new question. And you're also
And you can't dismiss that question. It's a real question.
and you're and then there's obviously there's inbuilt questions like, is that consciousness simply going to be a collection of your memories that cosplays as you,
Yeah.
or is it really going to be you?
No, those people had free agencies in that material. I mean, this is just a
Yeah, but
just
who
an
knows,
episode,
like how it
it's just a
no, it's not about the episode. This is obviously that is the oldest question of consciousness, also conceptualized by philosophers, which is going to be reiterated then.
Yeah.
Like, for example, one of the thought experiments that I had in my philosophy 101 class in uni was something along the lines of, if you're being transported to Mars through a teleportation machine, and what that machine does is it clones you and your memories exactly and just onto Mars and annihilates the initial version of you.
Yeah.
Is that still you? Right? So then the question would be, if you're uploading your consciousness into the AI mass, whatever that is,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If it's annihilating you on Earth and simply uploading that consciousness that is gathered there as data, is that going to be something that thinks it's you, or is it consciously going to be you?
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating.
Yeah. It is very fascinating. You
The
should, you should watch this episode, by
Bro,
the
the
way.
bhaag ke shaadi karne wale are gonna have a field day with this, bro.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
parents say you can't marry this girl, you get angry, you run into your room, you put on your VR headset, you go on a date with her at
Yeah.
like Nisar Shahid Park, That's the future.
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's a darker interpretation of it, but there's real like
I mean, this stuff is going to happen.
yeah,
Of course.
yeah.
I mean, you're already at a stage where
watch
people
this
are in love
episode.
with AI.
Yeah. Watch this episode, by the way. It's called San Junipero. It's one of the most powerful like works of media I've ever watched, man. Really, really good.
So, this is why we can come back to the archetype of Mercurius,
Yeah.
and why Mercurius is so important in the transition from the age of Pisces to Aquarius. And
Yeah.
in fact, I would almost say that Mercurius is the steam engine that takes one from the age of Pisces to Aquarius, because it's the eternally, endlessly individuating dynamic force.
Yeah.
Right? So when the umbrella of the institutionalized church or some religion begins to disseminate
Yeah.
into the world as a more private force,
Yeah.
what Mercurius says, what Mercurius does rather, is that it takes all this energy that was previously bottled up in institutionalized, organized religion,
In hierarchy.
especially in the West, and it harnesses that, right? And it says that actually this stabilizing God particle
Yeah.
that was previously captured by these organizations has corrupted the essence of what spirituality was meant to be, and now it is vested in you.
Yeah.
And then Mercurius begins its journey in the age of Aquarius in order to become the philosophorum, right? And which is then the image of the individuated self in the age of Aquarius. So I find that very interesting. It's like it gives you a lot more, as an individual, a lot more, although I'm someone who's sympathetic to organized or at least or orthodoxies, it gives you a certain internal locus of morality and validation,
Yeah.
which at least in some measure is important to have.
No, I get what you're saying.
So it's not a wholesale rejection of, reject religious norms and orthodoxies. No. For me at least, what it means is that don't just go with the herd. Don't just go with the state or the powers that be's formulations of what's good and bad, right? There has to be some internal resistance, and that constant dialectic with of your religious interiority and all spiritual nodes that you touch in the world is then the archetype, the activity of Mercurius in order to turn you into the Phileus, which is also a certain, a newly imperfect, perfect philosopher's stone, lapis, individuated being.
I mean, we touched quite a bit on Age of Pisces, and I think we even talked a little bit about Taurus and Aries, but Aquarius explicitly, right? So the takeaway isn't that okay, Aquarius is going to be this scary age, or it will be scary, as all ages are. They all have their shadows, but like at its best, like the hippie movement of the 1960s, like they were obsessed with the symbology of Aquarius. Like there were like these hit songs and stuff that they talked about the age of Aquarius, where it's like this, this era we have, which is free from dogma, which is liberalized, which is like, uh, hierarchies are flattened down, and there's this democratization of information and knowledge, that's the best case scenario of Aquarius, and that is like where we have kind of headed in a lot of ways as a society. So there are the positive aspects of it, but like the shadow of Aquarius lies in those Ahrimanic forces, which is like technocratic, data, material, extremely efficient systems. So Aquarius stands for both of these things, where in some ways it synthesizes the knowledge that has come from the Piscean era, which has come from the Aries and Tauran eras. It synthesizes all that data, but then it organizes it extremely technocratically, extremely systematically. So that's like the catch-22 of Aquarius, and whatever epoch comes after Aquarius, right? It's going to be in a lot of ways a reaction to those shadow elements as well, and that may be 2,000-3,000 years from now, God knows, you know what I mean? But it's an interesting concept. It's an interesting concept in the sense that, bro, once again, this entire system, what I like about the system as well, of course, nothing compares to our actual one system, but it's a useful thought experiment to compare these things. What I do like about this system is that it kind of avoids, like, the really, really deterministic dualism that might be extremely manifest in like our media, that might be manifest in like fiction and all these things, where it's like there's a force of good, there's a force of evil, but what it posits it as like, no, you have to have both. You have to have both. You can't have one without the other. And our best bet is finding a way to synthesize those things. The same way we synthesize our shadow. Our shadow is not an evil thing. A shadow is the neglected side of our psyche. The same way the catch-22s of evilness need to be integrated and need to be reckoned with as their own force and not just as the absence of.
I also think there's a very practical compromise between these two ideas. Like I still very much subscribe to the whole perfect image which rejects evil, right? But I think there's a reconciliation with the Mercurius style incorporation or holding contradictions, including evil.
Yeah.
And that is, you have an idea of what is purely good.
Yeah.
And you have an idea of what is purely evil.
Yeah.
Right? But the personal, your internal journey,
Yeah.
where you recognize your own evil and hold that contradiction, that is free of your conception of what good and evil are. That still exists.
But here's the thing: when you say like I there still needs to be a good that is a rejection of the evil, right? But now this question comes up. It's like unrestrained good also leads to excesses, where it's like, hey, why don't we let everyone just do what they want, be tolerant?
But I mean,
tolerant.
I don't think that's unrestrained good.
No, but you're still, what you're talking about is it's semantics, but what you're talking about is an integration of the two, where you will unrestrained evil is like, let's punish these let's bring our rats down onto them, let's conquer them. But a little bit of that line of thinking is necessary to make a functional society, right? You need to hold people to justice. You need to sometimes
But that's
punish.
not evil. Like, I don't think that's evil.
The acts in of themselves could symbolize evil and destruction. It's like, if I'm gonna like sentence a criminal to death, the act in of itself, it rubs a lot of people the wrong way, and people have a lot of moral qualms about it. You know what I mean? A lot of people will argue that it is evil, but what I'm kind of getting at is that you need to kind of reckon with and understand the necessity of some of those evils into actually synthesizing into a coherent, actually workable system. You know what I mean? So it's not that excesses in either direction, even excess of good can lead to some pretty horrible outcome. Like this is kind of what Machiavelli had talked about. It's like, look, the ruler, the head of state needs to be a little bit of a cunt ultimately for the sake of his people. So Machiavelli is one of those thinkers that really reckoned with evil as its own important axiom that is necessary to the perfect synthesis. You know what I mean?
Look, the binary you set up, I think the reason I don't agree with it
Yeah.
is because you're taking these notional forces of what's good, like compassion is good, but that's not how I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it in a different way.
How you
I'm
looking
saying
at it?
I'm assuming that the person, this mythical person that I'm talking about, has a system of good and evil. Say, I have an idea.
What's your idea of good and evil?
I have a religiously based idea of good and evil. So I have an idea what's good.
So what would be
And
evil? What would be an evil act? What would be a materially evil act?
a materially evil act.
Or a tendency? What's a materially evil tendency?
I think it's very clear. I mean, firstly, the answer, and it's not a cop-out answer. It's genuinely, for me, is what the religion itself prescribes, and that's the end all. But in order to reason it out, but in order to reason it out,
I'm in agreement with that. But give me a material example of an evil act.
It ranges anything that has been prescribed as unjust. For example, if someone stealing,
Okay.
right, in certain conditions is permitted, right? But again, what I'm saying is that in my idea of good and bad, because I have a set moral system, those intricacies of context are already included.
Fair enough.
Right.
That's also what I'm coming at. That's also what I'm coming at.
That's what I'm saying.
But the terminology of good and evil, then I think it's semantics, but I feel like they're insufficient to address what it is. I think what you're talking about is perfection. And perfection stands at the unity of that unfettered good and that unfettered evil. You know what I mean?
Keep
It's
exchanging
complete.
this, okay, my thing's very simple.
Yeah.
Okay, and again, you don't have to agree with this. I can just say this is my system of systemizing,
fair
right?
enough.
Which is that I'm assuming that this hypothetical person has some moral system in place, has some broad moral axiom in which he considers some things good and some things evil, right? In your material self, whether you like it or not, the form of the good and the form of the evil is not manifest in some clear-cut way. You are complicated. Right?
You need to synthesize them.
Yeah, and it's important to hold contradictions in yourself, right? But also important to have certain static good and bad. That's what I'm saying. Do you not think there's certain moral axioms that you have certain moral axioms that are like constant at least at some point in your life? Yes?
Yeah, but they're constant until they aren't.
I mean, but yeah, you can say that about anything.
Is lying to save your life.
You can say that about anything.
No, but is lying to save your life, is lying to save your loved one's life not the right thing to do?
Obviously it is.
But lying is an inherently evil act. Lying is
it's
evil.
Contextualized as something good.
But here's the thing, you're synthesizing it, but in of itself, remove
whose moral system is in and of itself? It's all contextual, always will be. Why would you view it in and of itself?
You have to view it in of itself. The lying, the act itself is a negative act.
No,
Stealing itself is a negative act.
How?
Because
what makes it evil? What makes lying evil?
Is deception not evil? Is deception not evil? If
in context,
no, remove the context. Just look at the act in of itself. So, be solipsistic about the act is what I'm saying.
Why?
Because it's a relevant thought experiment. That's why. You are already doing that. You are already saying that no, there are some axioms that are good and evil. When you say that there are some axioms that are good and evil in of themselves, you're already...
I didn't say in and of themselves. I never said that.
You just said that there are some pillars of good and some pillars
Absolutely.
of evil.
And those rules of good and bad are clearly fixed in the moral systems of the world. And this is something that, okay, say you don't have one, right? Say yours always keeps changing, right?
Yeah.
That is not the case for most people. They will change their position on certain moral things over time, right? Of course. But are there, by and large, certain moral goods and moral evils that people subscribe to?
Of course. No, that's what I'm asking you. That's what I keep asking you, that you keep avoiding this answer.
I didn't. I said it very clearly. You maybe didn't understand it, but I said it very clearly.
What is a moral good? Tell me. Give me an example of a moral good. What is moral good? Tell me an act. Tell me something I can do now.
Saving a dying child is a moral good.
Would it have been a moral good to save a dying hit your baby
Okay,
Hitler.
again,
Would that be the moral good? No,
basic basic logical fallacy experiment here.
Yeah.
You realize this is not exclusive criticism of anything. What I am saying is I am literally setting up a system where I am talking about an objective morality based system, and your objection to that is continually, why isn't it subjective? I'm saying I don't believe that. I'm positing in the first place an objective morality based system.
You are, right?
Yeah, of course.
No, but then the contradictions will eat themselves up. The contradictions will continuously.
So what's your answer? Don't believe in anything.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying you gotta be like, yeah, this is an evil act that is necessary. Yeah, this is a good act, and I'm gonna reject it right now.
So context does not matter for you.
Context is supremely fucking important, but I'm saying the context does not mean you re-territorialize evil as good. No. This is what the mistake that humans keep doing is like, let me re-territorialize evil as good. But stop doing that.
I don't believe that. I do not believe that.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But then you can see
in the eternal accounting of good and bad, me doing something in a certain context will not be written down as a bad thing because I did it because I had to. Right? So this assumes.
But the way this world is manifest, you have laws, right?
Yeah.
Does the law give a if that you were starving and your child was
I don't give a fuck about the law. I give a fuck about divine accountability.
Divine accountability is not divorced from the law. Divine accountability is not divorced from the law. It shouldn't be in the ideal system, right? It shouldn't be.
It is.
No, but then you come back down to the Javed Akhtar type thinking where you can divorce religious ethics from the systems we create. The systems we create might use nice terminologies, but they're still based upon religious ethical systems.
I never said, and this is very simple. It's a very simple distinction. If you care to listen to it,
I am listening to your distinction, but your distinction falls upon it.
Brother, divine accountability, and this is very simple actually. A divinely informed system is something you also know I agree with.
Yeah.
I'm saying divine.
I agree with.
Yeah.
Something I agree
with.
But the beauty of the divine.
I said something very specific. I said divine accountability is not something that is happening. Like, there's no God on this earth to tell me I'm doing the right thing or the wrong thing.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
And like, all I'm saying is that, again, I don't know how you're falsifying this at all because I'm literally not even saying this is how things should be. I'm telling you what I believe. Right?
I'm getting to a semantic war with you, but I don't like when you use. It is good to do like what I don't like about your approach is that you re-territorialize the evil into good, context dependent. I don't think that's the right approach. I think the right approach is that
you believe in objective morality
for a better,
You believe in objective morality?
No, I don't.
You don't think there's a good and bad?
Very, very context dependent. I think that sometimes.
And are you saying it's context dependent yourself?
But I've never subscribed to a purely good act and a purely evil act. I think that I'm rejecting that notion altogether. I think sometimes the better outcome, the more ethical outcome is gonna happen when you choose that evil act. Machiavelli talked about this. The moral act is not, the better act is not necessarily a good act. Sometimes it is the evil act, but then re-territorializing that evil act as good is a fallacy. That's kind of where we're fucking up.
That's fallacy?
That's the shadow. No, but that's the shadow.
You're conflating good and efficient.
That's quite literally.
You literally just said
that's quite literally the shadow of the age of Pisces.
You're confusing.
That's quite literally the shadow of the age of Pisces.
You just in real time confuse the good with the efficient. Machiavelli advocates specifically for the violation of base Christian moral good in order to achieve better ends.
Yeah.
So the better and the good in the Machiavellian context are explicitly separated. I'm explicitly talking about the good. I, as most people on this planet who subscribe to certain moral systems, will have certain ideas of objective morality. And yes, there will be a certain thing. There will be.
So tell me an objective moral. That's what I keep asking. Tell me an objective moral. Tell me one. Tell me one. Tell me one thing that is always objectively the right thing to do. Tell me one, nah.
Do people believe in an objective good and evil system? Yes. Billions of people do.
No, they don't. Because they will sell that objective good thing that they have in their mind when it's convenient. People will lie to save their life. People will steal to save their life. People will commit genocide in order to better their own people.
That is incorporated. That caveat of certain compulsion is incorporated into every single one of those moral systems. It is explicitly written there. We can't show.
So you don't see the cognitive dissonance when I use that. Hey, listen, conditionally genocide is good. You don't see the cognitive dissonance in that.
How is conditionally? Which moral system advocates for this?
Which moral system advocates for this? I mean, there is a situation where if you have a conquered people, you have conquered all of them, it might be for the best to make sure that they don't rebel against your system one day, that you kill all of them, right? That is the basis of a lot of that is the basis of a lot of ethnic cleansing that has happened throughout history. It's an evil act, but evil nonetheless, it is still a necessary act.
Again, that literally has nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
No,
that has
but
nothing to do with it.
It does have everything to do with your
All I'm saying, bro, all I'm saying is, look, there are, you can talk about people's hypocrisy and pass these judgments. I don't see how that's relevant to the fact that billions of people actively subscribe to. If you have the judgment that all of them are insincere, lying, that's a different thing. But
I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
But I'm saying push comes to shove, they will betray their systems.
But okay,
They will betray their systems.
you're saying that lying to save your life is betraying a moral system.
If you're going to use axioms of purely good and purely evil, yes. But if you're going to say both are necessary, no, you're not. You're not then. You
You're just
understand?
fighting the semantic war continuously.
No, but the semantic war is f***ing necessary, because what I'm trying to come at is good, evil, this. We need completion. We need completion. I'm arguing in favor of the uber mentioned a lot of it. I'm arguing in favor for conclusion to the Age of Pisces riddle, which is what Aquarius will or can be.
Which, you're talking about the Age of Pisces, which itself, its author says that this is limited to the Western Christian canon. You're using that to contextualize the entire world.
It's an analogy. It's an analogy.
No, but I mean, I think that the reason
forget.
I'll tell you exactly,
Forget that.
in the analogy, in the symbolic analogy, I'll tell you exactly why it fails, right?
Why does it fail?
Because all of the major critics of Jung, right? I mean, he himself says that this would fail in the epic system of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, for example.
Yeah.
And then Mary Louise von France comes and says that the reason in the Islamic world this will never work is because canon Islamic scripture is a system of closed symbols. Right? And it doesn't allow you to innovate and iterate the same way that the morphology of a pantheon does.
Okay.
Right? So that's what I'm saying. Like, look, you may have a particular view of it. That does not validate me or anyone else saying that we have fixed moral axioms. You may say, you might think, and you might believe, and you're perfectly in your own full right to believe that it needs to be contextual or it doesn't need to be contextual. In my eyes, it's very simple. In my eyes, when scripture says, or anything, any moral system says, lie to save your own life.
Yeah.
That's not an exception. That's part of the moral system. And when I say there's an objective morality, I'm saying that specific injunction that says lie to save your life is a part of my morality. For me, that's not an exception. Right?
Great. And I don't have a problem with that. But we're in agreement there.
But the point I'm trying to make, is all I'm saying is like you've got these set of rules that define vaguely the good and vaguely the bad, and then specifically as well with like if you're getting into like religion, right?
But don't you see the moral hazard in that a little bit? Hey, it is for the greater good, so I'm going to do this bad thing.
No, and that's what I'm saying.
That's the moral. No. From my logic
that's
perspective,
where Mercurius comes in.
Yeah.
That's where Mercurius comes in. Nah, that's what I'm saying. Mercurius says that Mercurius says I have ideas of what is good, and they may be changing. I have ideas of what is bad, and they may be changing. Right? But Mercurius is that contradiction holding dynamic self within you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think we're in disagreement. I think it's very
You're not.
Yeah.
It's totally semantic. So because it's totally semantic. We're actually talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
It's just the where we depart from each other is that you still, I think, for the most part, you will use an evil act and place it in the moral system and rebrand it as good. I think that's a moral hazard in of itself that creates like genocide or any of these evil acts where it's like it's morally justified because it's in that moral system. The semantics where they do matter in this, it's like, no, this is an evil act
But see,
in of itself which is necessary to complete, but I'm not going to re-territorialize this evil act in the moral system of good.
Think about it.
That's the difference.
What I'm trying to say is, look, there's a sphere.
Yeah.
And that sphere is all things that are good.
Yeah.
Right? And every person is going to be, it'll be sliced up into a million pieces. Every person's looking at it from a different angle. Right? In this simple system that I'm suggesting, I think it's an easy system. And it's not perfect, but it's shorthand. Right? For the Age of Aquarius, in my mind. The reason it's useful, and I think it's useful until we cast our own moral predilections onto it. So, for example, when we say that, this might be used to accommodate genocide, for us, that's objectively obviously a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right? But in my opinion, when you cross the threshold of casting judgments onto it and you violate the neutrality, I think that it needs to have a certain sanctity, because ultimately all of us will say I'm someone living in purely in the age of Aquarius. I'm going to live this life where there's going to be ideas of good, and there's going to be ideas of bad, and there's going to be the mercurial center which is going to hold that good and bad.
Yeah.
Right? But it's still important for me to have conceptions of good and have conceptions of evil. And maybe both of us are wrong in having the semantic war, because maybe the rehabilitating certain acts and not certain acts comes after this entire moral system. But nonetheless, because it is a private journey, I maybe casting our own moral ideas onto it in the first place is kind of wrong, because the way, Jung says that every individual journey is completely unique. Maybe that is also kind of the point here.
Maybe.